Self-determination, which is what we want as a people.
What's the alt-right? What's the alt-right?
How can you raise your kids in an environment with two political parties that are actively trying to flood this nation with a replacement demographic?
Conservatives betrayed America.
Conservatives.
What's the alt-right? What's the alt-right?
The alt-right is the identity politics of the right wing.
What's the alt-right? What's the alt-right?
The evil racist frog people.
The fire rises.
The ovens were too small to kill 6 million Jews.
The evil racist frog people.
The fire rises.
The ovens were too small to
In the fucking oven, you're gonna go.
Jews.
The evil racist frog people.
The fire rises.
The ovens were too small to kill 6 million Jews.
The evil racist frog people.
The white nations are currently undergoing a genocidal attack. White genocide.
White sovereignty. White sovereignty and white nations.
There's no fucking Western white nation which is safe. We don't want to be flooded with all these brown immigrants.
White sovereignty. White sovereignty and white nations.
No, we need more immigrants because white people aren't having kids.
White sovereignty. White sovereignty and white nations.
Oh, it's so overpopulated because we brought in all these brown immigrants, so white people need to stop having kids.
White sovereignty. White sovereignty and white nations.
What happens to all multi-ethnic empires, which is it is either going to break up or it is going to collapse.
Now, if you're shocked by what I've said so far, you're not part of the alt-right. Not yet. But just wait. We're growing all the time. We're growing all the time. We're growing all the time. 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 All the time.
Okay, we're recording. So, I want to welcome everybody to the second episode of the Philosophy of Power podcast. The first edition, which if you're watching this on YouTube later, was my interview this past summer with philosopher Peter Shortett Hughes and his book, Pneumatics. And that one's on YouTube, but it's not labeled at this point that I'm recording this as episode 1. It's just my interview with him. So also you're going to be able to find this show on YouTube later when I publish it, and on Stitcher and TalkShoe, and also you'll be able to find it on SoundCloud. So those are the places you can find the show, and hopefully there'll be other places later as I kind of get into doing a show again. So this episode I have with me Dion Clark from Radio Werewolf, and I was actually a guest on his show to talk about my book. When was it, Dion? It was sometime this past summer, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, I think, in June.
Yeah, okay. So around my birthday. And, yeah, so I figured I'd return the favor, and there's a lot, man. There's so much that has happened since I even made a video last. I've been on a kind of a soiree, and I haven't really made any videos in a while. And since then, we've had the rise of the alt-right. We've had, we've had Trump, the Trump election, and all that stuff. And so this is a great opportunity to talk about all that stuff and talk about the alt-right, because I know some things about it from people I've interacted with online. And who knows, maybe I know enough about it, and maybe Dion won't tell me anything I don't know, but I still think it's interesting to talk about, and maybe we'll touch on some other topics. And then we have a caller we have somebody who may call in later, I'm not sure, but we'll see. And you know who that is, Brandon, and so that ought to be interesting. All right, so did you see like it was yesterday that Richard Spencer got punched in the face twice by, I think it was Antifa at the inauguration?
Yeah, actually, I did see that. I saw that this morning. I didn't see a whole lot of media yesterday. I was pretty busy yesterday. I had a lot of things going on. But I did see that video this morning of him getting punched in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the problem with men today. The fact that he got punched in the face and he just stood there in shock and awe of what happened and let that guy run away, this is the major problem with people today.
Right. So what would you have rathered him do?
He should have chased him down and beat his ass.
I know I would have. I know I would have. I mean, that was DC though. Like I'm usually packing something, right? So,
Right.
Whether it's a knife or something, but I'm usually armed. So somebody would be really extremely stupid to attack me. That's for sure. Because I actually, it's funny. I was walking my ferrets, and this past summer, and there's this guy. I don't know who the hell he was. He could have been some homeless guy, for all I know. I think he was. And I was just walking my ferret down Main Street in Keene. This guy came up and stomped his foot real hard in front of me and said he just basically threatened my ferret. So I said, what? And I chased his ass, and he ran down this alley. And I could have ran after him, but, a little further, but I had a ferret, right? So what was I going to do? You know what I mean? I couldn't let the ferret go and then continue my assault or whatever, continue my pursuit of the villain. But yeah, I know what you mean. Maybe he's afraid of, legal consequences. I don't know.
Well, it was clearly that guy punched him in the face for no reason. He was just sitting there talking to like a reporter or something.
Yeah.
And the guy just comes out of nowhere and just hits him in the face. So it was clearly self-defense.
Right.
Chasing down a guy, that's kind of goes outside the realm of self-defense. That's more of a revenge, or, the most you would have gotten is disorderly conduct or battery. It's no big deal. It's a ticket.
How do you feel about, I was watching a video yesterday, and I can't remember who it was, but I heard somebody saying something about it was Matthew Heimbach, and he was saying that the alt-right has no leaders, right? And that it's a movement, right? And I kind of think that's a problem, right? I kind of think that one of the things that really concerned me is that when the herd and slave type of people are allowed to idealize and moralize, they will formulate those ideals and ideologies that will suit them, right?
Right.
And what concerns me is if we were to become an alt-right nation tomorrow, let's say suddenly, I don't know, Trump saw the light. He made an announcement tomorrow that he is, he's giving into all of the alt-right demands, and he is now worshiping Richard Spencer or whatever it is, and he's now a white nationalist, and so he's going to purge this land of non-white people, right? I kind of feel like it's going to be like if most of the people had it their way in the alt-right, I feel like it would be like a country of mediocrity, like it is now, only with white people, right? And I just kind of feel like socialism subsidizes mediocrity. I don't know. That's how I feel about it. What do you think?
No, I think you're correct that socialism does. But the fact is, if we had our own homeland, it wouldn't be a socialist utopia like the leftists want to portray us as, or not really the leftists so much as the basic conservatives. They try to put this idea that National Socialism is leftist and it's just socialist, which has never been. It wasn't that way in Germany during the 1930s and 40s. And it wouldn't be that way today. But the beginning of your question or comment you were making there,
Right.
the beginning of if tomorrow became an alt-right nation or a white nationalist nation, it's kind of hard to define what it would be because there is no leadership and there is no precise, cohesive political movement at all.
Right.
It's so splintered and fractured that everybody believes whatever the hell they want to. You got National Socialists, you got anarchists, you have people who want to bring back the monarchies and all kinds of different things. You got American patriots, hold up the Constitution, got to bring back the Constitution, all that stuff. So there's no real cohesive unit, so who knows what it would be? It's pretty much all depends on the person who takes the reins, I guess.
Well, I guess I kind of bring it up because, I'd made a Facebook post announcing this episode today and what we were going to be talking about, and I asked people if they had any questions, and one commenter says, I'm sure this is already on the roster, but talk about the worship of socialism and the infiltration of leftist economics and ideas in this purportedly right-wing movement. So I don't know if he's coming from like a libertarian or ex-libertarian perspective on that one.
Yeah, see, he really didn't, specify what he meant. Like libertarian, it has kind of gone more left-wing in the past couple of years. And, like I brought up National Socialism, people on the right, like basic conservatives, they try to argue that National Socialism is socialism. Or he could also be referring to, like in Europe, a lot of countries have their form of socialism, especially like Norway and Sweden, very, very socialistic types of governments. So it's kind of hard to answer his question if he really wasn't specific.
Yeah, no, he didn't really get very specific on it, but he might have meant something along the lines of what I was thinking, and and it's just what I already brought up, basically, And then I had another question, and this actually comes from Academia Land, so I can't tell you who it is because we don't want Antifa or some lefty lunatic who listens to this later finding this person and harassing them or whatever. So let me just find their. If you're hearing a little ruckus in the back, that's my weasels, my little ferrets. They're
okay,
beating the shit out of each other right now. So let me see. Where is it? God damn it. It's my fault. I should have isolated this and put it down on my notepad or something. Oh, here it is. He says, to what extent Nietzsche is an influence on the alt-right? He says, I know Richard Spencer was inspired by him. I wonder which aspects. And of course, you can't answer that for Richard Spencer.
No. But personally, in my own life, Nietzsche's been a real inspiration and pretty much a role model for me for my entire life. I kind of started in, LaVeyan Satanism. That's pretty much where I got my...
That makes a lot of sense, actually. That makes a lot of sense why we would get along then, because, I've never been a Satanist. I think I identified as one for, like, a couple months, but then I kind of got out of that. I kind of saw, I don't know, as I progressed, I just saw some things that I wasn't necessarily on board with. But, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah, but then once you read the Satanic Bible and the different writings of Anton LaVey, you kind of realize that most of his stuff is plagiarized. So you go and find the source material, which he seemed like he pretty much admitted to it anyways. Like the first part of the Satanic Bible is basically stolen from Might is Right.
Well, actually, the original edition of the Satanic Bible actually said that was actually taken from Might is Right. But what happened was when the second edition came around, in future editions of it, the editor decided to take it out. So it wasn't as though he stole that. He actually did cite that in the original thing there. But yeah, it is from Might is Right, yeah.
Right. And, that's probably pretty much the case. I never heard that before, but it seems like that would actually be what happened. But then you look at the rest of the philosophy, and it's very Nietzschean and Might is Right. And that's pretty much how I've always lived my life. I'm kind of more of a social Darwinist.
Right.
And I think that, I know a lot of people, they try to... The basic idea of the Übermensch, which Nietzsche, that was one of his defining philosophies, along with the will to power, are two of the most concrete philosophies of the alt-right and white nationalism. Even if people don't actually know who Nietzsche is, they know those two concepts.
Right, yeah. I don't know, I guess, and I know some people who would probably identify as alt-right, very, very few that are Satanists, but I've talked to, I've had a lot of email back and forth with Peter H. Gilmore, the current head, and he endorsed my book and one of my videos, and I kind of feel like we're fellow travelers in some way, but then I look at some of his political comments, and there seems to be kind of I feel as though there's a leftist infiltration and a lot of degeneracy that goes on in the Church of Satan. So that, I don't know, that's how I feel about it. So that kind of keeps me from identifying with that. Yeah, it's difficult because some of the coolest people I've met are in the Church of Satan, right? And
that's completely reasonable, because once Anton LaVey died, and you had different people in different points that had control over the Church of Satan, it kind of went in different directions. And especially when Blanche Barton was the head of the Church of Satan, it seemed like it went really left-wing there for a while.
Right.
And they kept bringing out all these articles about, Satanism and National Socialism are complete opposites and all this garbage.
Right.
And it seems like it's kind of going back to the original idea that Anton LaVey had. Anton LaVey, he was very traditionalist. In a lot of his writings and a lot of his speaking, he always talked about the traditional forms of male and female gender roles. Even before that idea came about, he was always talking about, he was basically talking against feminism at that time, which is completely different than the type of feminism we have today. And he's always talking about, going back to the land and getting in touch with your roots. And it seems like the modern version of Satanism, and a lot of the modern version of paganism as a whole, has become very left-wing and almost SJW types.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like I'm sympathetic to, like Nordic paganism. Like I'm sympathetic in the sense that, whereas I see Christianity as a slave religion, I don't see Thor and Wotan, Odinism and that kind of stuff as a slave religion, right? This was a warrior culture we're talking about.
Right.
And so that really separates it from there. But yet I'm hostile. I'm not really hostile, but I'm let's put it this way. I was added into a kind of like a Nordic paganist group, like on Facebook, without my consent. They just added me. This happens to me all the time. People just add me to groups, and then I just asked them, like, what justifications do you have for what you believe, right? And I think what kind of, there's something about me that antagonizes these types of people, and what it is, it's my skepticism, right? And Nietzsche talks about that the believer is necessarily the small type of man, and the skeptic is necessarily the greater type of man, right? And I think that's because, as a skeptic, you're not going to be led along to just have your interests subsumed under some religion, right? You're not going to be suckered into believing something because you are questioning everything, right? You are asking, well, what's your justification for this, right? You're not naive, you're not gullible. And what it comes down, what I found with these type of people, and I even had some of these people not too long ago tell me that truth was less important than utility. So in other words, I'm believing what I believe because it grants me power in some way by being a part of a power structure, an in-group, right? And it unites me with this in-group. So I'm going to believe this because it makes my life easier, kind of thing. And I don't share that as a skeptic. I have different values, right? I want to know what is true, and I'm not so concerned about what is utility. You know what I mean? Like, I actually want to know what is the case. Like, I'm curious about life and existence. So for me, that's kind of difficult for me to get on board with. And I see a lot of people now outright kind of conflate atheism, a lack of belief, with the left. And with, so you're an atheist, so you must be, a social justice warrior, or you're part of the problem because you're an individualist, so you're, against the agenda that we have, right? And they throw around terms like hyper-individualism. And I kind of have a different take on that, and that is that, and that's a Nietzschean take, and that is, Nietzsche said that basically that individualism is for a privileged few, right? It's for the strong. And this is going to piss a lot of people off later when they hear this. And, and so that's how I see it. Like, I'm aristocratic, and I see it that way. I'm kind of elitist, right? So I think, fine, you can have your collectivism, but we need, you need to be led. Like, we can't just have this, like, I don't want this democracy to go on, right, that we have. Like, I think it's disgusting, and it only suits, it doesn't contribute to a higher type right? It only suits the herd animal, and it subsidizes mediocrity. It produces more, like you get more of what you subsidize, right? If we shut off, for example of this, if we shut off welfare tomorrow, how many people do you think would want to immigrate here? If we shut off all gives me that, right? How many people how many Mexicans do you think would hop over the border if they knew they couldn't get free handouts? Right? And it's
very little.
It's kind of the same thing with, I think, with democracy and equalityism. The herd always wants an equality asylum, and they always want some external source to validate their existence, to take care of them, to be their daddy. And I'm just not one of those types, right? And I realize that not everyone is those types, and those are the type of people, and this is going to sound really, really egoistic and presumptuous of me, but I really think that my kind should lead. My kind who is not easily deceived, who is independent and is ready to make tough choices, instead of having a huge smorgasbord of give me that programs, for example.
No, I would actually agree with that 100%. And I think a lot of people don't actually understand and realize that you have to better yourself first. It seems like a lot of these people, they just want to follow the herd. It's like the herd mentality. It's a slave morality is basically what they live with and what they try to propagate for the rest of us. And they don't really understand anything outside of their own social bubble, I guess you could say.
Right.
They don't really understand anything else. And the problem, especially with the alt-right, is it's more of an online phenomenon. And it kind of started in 4chan and different areas like that, and then it kind of moved outside of that, and it's a movement that's in its infancy. So it's okay, I guess, at this point that there isn't a cohesive ideology yet, or political philosophy, or anything like that.
Right.
So I can understand that, but a lot of these people, they believe all these different things, especially like the Christian thing.
Well, I think I'm sorry to cut you off, but I wanted to say this before I forget, and that is, I think one of the things that got me interested in the alt-right was I heard Spencer say that it was like the intelligentsia of the right kind of thing, and I don't remember exactly what his words were, but I could have sworn it was something like that. And then I started to get to, jump into some of these groups on Facebook and talk to some of these people online and stuff, and it just didn't seem that way. It seemed like for example, I got kicked off of TRS forums, right? The right stuff.biz forums. Yeah. And it was because nobody had any arguments for anything. They were like lefties, like you try to argue with a lefty and all they do is fling out insults, right? They just attack your person rather than your ideas, right? And I found that in TRS and TRS as well, and I was like, this is disgusting. Like if these are the people who are trying to decide the future of anything, nevertheless, white people, then I hope they don't get their way, right? Because I certainly don't want these types of people in charge of the destiny of mankind, right? Because that's, I mean, you got to have some intellectual rigor. You've got to have people in charge that are intelligent, that have their fucking head on their shoulders, and then that are not just trying to be trolls and polemic and that actually have arguments for what they believe. Because I didn't see any of that in TRS, right? Or a lot of the other groups that I've been in, unfortunately. But, it's just the way it is. It's just statistically, you're going to find very few free spirits in a group, right? If any, right? They're always going to be the minority, and then most people are going to be, just like herd animals, just kind of like going along with whatever trend is happening at the time.
Right. And that's the problem I kind of had with most of the alt-right being, this online movement. It seems just like these, I don't know, kids or whatever you want to call them, just kind of go along because they think it's funny or they think it's fun. They'll post these fashy memes and all this. But like you were saying before about we need more of an elite intellectual movement, and I think there are segments of that in the alt-right. It's just that when you go on forums, you talk to, anybody who wants to get on there can get on there. So you don't know who you're talking to, really.
Right,
And
right.
it does seem, it's more intellectual based than, basic conservatism or even libertarian, I can never say that word right. Libertarians.
I think
We know a lot more about history and philosophy and sociology.
Right, I think you're talking about libertarians, right? You said libertarians or
Yeah,
libertarians?
libertarians.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and then, you've got Cantwell. Cantwell is, been affiliated with TRS, and he's closer in my direction. Christopher Cantwell, for those of you who don't know, listening to this later, has a show here on YouTube and Roku, Stitcher, and all this different places. It's called Radical Agenda, and he talks about current events, and he's been covering the Trump movement this year, and he's made some guest appearances on TRS, and he's kind of alt-right-ish, but he's a libertarian, and he's not down with the the leftist, or let me phrase this another way. He's not down with the socialism and stuff like that. Like he wants a I guess like a libertarian utopia with white people in it, I guess would be one way of describing it. But he's got this thing called the physical removal principle, where he wants to basically purge all leftists and stuff from this country. And I think that's pretty much describes his support for Trump, was that Trump was bold enough to call out the leftist media and the social justice BS that's been going on. But at the end of the day, Trump is an ends to, he's a means to an end, right?
Right. He's definitely not our savior. He's not going to save this country or the white race, but he is going to put a safety valve on our demographic displacement, and that's basically the main reason that I support Donald Trump. If he's going to build a wall and deport millions of illegals and stop the refugees from flooding in, I'm all for it, and I'm happy for it. Other people want to get on him because he's still, a Zionist. It's like, okay, well, we can't have everything all at one time. We got to do this piece by piece and be pragmatic about it. You're not going to get the goddamn Fuhrer in there.
Right. He's kind of like in some ways, he's kind of a step in that direction because of immigration, because of his views on immigration. While, speaking of that, I've often wondered about white nationalists and how would they deal with the people that are already here. So, there's probably some extreme LARPy type individuals out there who will say, I'll just gas them all, or, something like that. But
right.
Realistically, unless we plan on totally going back to, unless they plan on totally going back to like Hitler or something like that, like how do they plan on getting rid of these people? Because I think it is kind of difficult in the sense that, like, I know people who are not white, and I know some white, I have some white, non-white friends, and they're pretty cool people, I have a friend who's Jew, okay? I know it's probably a big curse word for people who will probably be listening to this later, but I have a friend who's a Jew, not like Jew, like Jewish, like...
not a Jewy Jew?
Not like Jewish in the sense of having that religion, right? But someone who's actually kind of a popular atheist, but is just a really nice person, a really kind person, a really understanding person. Like I've talked to this person about some of these ideas, and while this person disagrees, they're not the kind that are like, oh, you're racist, you're a scumbag, you're this or that. Like, really cool kind of person. I don't know how to describe it, but let me just say that it would be difficult for me to kick this person out of the country just because they're of a different race when they're not doing anything to harm anybody. You know what I mean? It's easier when it's like some freaking Black Lives Matter, stew nod or something, but it's harder when you have, for example, here in Keene, right, there's not, New Hampshire doesn't have a lot of minorities in it. It's like 90-something% white, right? And the few black people that are here in town seem to be pretty nice people. And they're not black like listening to rap and saggy pants and thug mentality. They're just like, they're actually very white, right? And I think it's because they live in they're surrounded by white people, right? And they've kind of assimilated, right? And so what do you do with those kind of people?
Well, first of all, I think it's pretty much of a pipe dream that we're going to take back the whole country. But let's just say hypothetically we did.
Right.
I think you got to take emotions out of it. You have to, look at this logically, and these people have to go. We're not going to. And when I say they have to go, I don't say we're going to kill them. No, we just send them somewhere else.
Right.
Like after the Civil War, Lincoln wanted to send all the blacks back to Liberia, and they created a entire nation to send these people back. And then he got assassinated, and then that kind of just dropped by the wayside. But
from a logical standpoint, I'm not saying that I disagree, right? Because I've thought about this too. I've thought about it long and hard, and I've thought about and I think we talked about it on the show, on your show, that these people may be cool, but then their descendants could grow up and become. We could have, when they become 10% of the population again. Then we could have another movement of, SJWs and the country could be in chaos again, right? I think, is that your logic or?
Yeah, like if you look at the Pulse nightclub shooter, he was second generation. He was assimilated. He had a father who was mostly assimilated too, but he also had some pretty radical views, and he was supportive of the Muslim Brotherhood and Iraq and some other stuff in his background there. And, if you looked at this guy, like when he was in high school, you're thinking like, hey, this guy's a good guy. But then he grows up and he gets these radical beliefs, and he kills all these gay people in this nightclub.
So what do you do with people who are like a quarter Mexican, or do you get them out too, even though they're like 75% white?
See, that's the kind of thing that's going to have to be. We need some sort of, regulation or law. Like National Socialist Germany, they had racial purity laws. And I think if you were a quarter Jewish, you were okay. You need another types of regulations to figure all this crap out. If you're a quarter Mexican or black or whatever, I guess that's not too bad, I guess. But it's not really for me to say.
All right, but who would it be to say? You know what I'm saying? Like, who would say that? Who would decide such things? And,
whoever we put into power, who was ever in charge of the government and the, people who make the laws. That's who would be in charge of it.
Right, but if we have a system like we have now, where here's the thing, the system we have now is a system in which people, in order to get into a position to make those kind of decisions, have to pander to the lowest common, the lowest people on the freaking in the country, right? They have to pander to the average rube in order to get in a position to make these kind of decisions. So we're always going to get these leaders that are, let's face it, they're put there because they're chosen by, not by intelligent people, but by, it's like, I like to compare it to like a jury. Who would you rather decide your case, right? If you defended yourself against some Antifa person, and the jury that had to decide whether you were innocent or not, would you rather it be a panel of experts, of people who are intelligent, who are able to think objectively, or would you rather pick Bob down at Burger King? And you know what I mean? Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, and that's what we're dealing with democracy, right? That's part of my problem with that.
Yeah, but I don't think it would be a democracy if whites had their own homeland. I think, see, I don't consider myself a national socialist. If anything, I'm a tribal anarchist. So my thing would be more small scale than
like Jack
entire
Donovan or that kind of thing. Like what did he call it? He calls it anarcho-fascist. He's like a tribalist, but he's...
Yeah, it's tribes. It's small communities.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not thinking real big scale here at the moment. Maybe, later down the road, maybe we can think of that. But we're not really in that position right now, to be completely honest about it.
Right. No, I know we're not. I'm just talking about, like, I'm trying to worm my way into these people's heads and see what do they actually want. Because, like, I was talking with a friend in academia land today before the show, and we were talking about Brexit, right? And because he lives in England, so we're talking about Brexit, and we were talking about a lot of other things in the political sphere, and so we were just wondering, like, what do these social justice warriors want? These people that are protesting Trump, right? What the hell do these people want? Like, they're doing a march. They did a march, a women's march or something today. And yet when you go talk to these people, you can never get them to tell you what they want, other than maybe Trump's head on a platter or something like that, right? So I guess I'm trying to figure out what is it that the movement, and that's the problem when you don't have leaders, right? You don't have focus. You have like a headless body that's just kind of throbbing around on the floor, right? And you need leaders to have like a focus, of a specific direction and specific things that you want. So like if CNN tomorrow were to contact some alt-right people and say, what do you want? Would they have specific layout of things that they want, right?
Right.
And what would those things be, I mean, other than vagaries like, well, we want to gas the kikes or, whatever, like, I mean, yeah, that's something, but what are you going to do after that? Like, what kind of civilization do you want, right? And I just feel like from how a lot of these people are acting, it's going to be a fucking national socialist, another national socialism. Like, that's what I feel like a lot of these people want.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. I agree with you 100% on that. It's like we don't have any actual leadership, so there's not a cohesive political movement. It's just different people spouting out different ideas about what they want and what should happen and how they should, go about getting those, which, this is the thing that we've kind of been working on over here at Radio Werewolf. This is a thing we call the big fucking gap.
The big what?
The big fucking gap.
The big gap?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Basically, you go from, well, how are we going to achieve our political homeland? Step one, wake people up. That's what everybody says. We got to wake people up. We got to educate them and this and that. It's like, okay, then what?
Right.
Then what are we going to do after that? If you look at, all the podcasts and forums and everywhere on the internet, it seems like there's a lot of people woken up already. So what are we going to do with that?
Right. Well, there's like, I think, well, because there's no head, right? Because it's a headless movement. Well, to some extent, I'd like to think that Spencer is somewhat of a, a leader. And I admire some things about Spencer actually, but God, I forgot what I was gonna freaking say. I hate when that happens. It just flew away, like a little birdie. I don't know. Go ahead. Whatever you're gonna say.
Well, I would agree that I think Richard Spencer should actually take the helm and basically declare himself leader of the alt-right. He's been I don't know, wishy-washy about it. Sometimes he thinks he's the leader. Sometimes he's says that he doesn't want to be a leader. It's like, just do it.
Right.
We need somebody to lead the helm and put into effect what we want to do and where we want to go with this. And I think he might be doing that because he did start up a new website. I think it's called altright.com. He used to have one called Alternative Right.
Oh, is that
one a week ago?
Is that new?
Yeah.
Okay, I saw because he had what was his other one? He had another one, didn't he?
He had Ratings Journal. And I guess he's not going to be doing too much with that anymore. He's started up this new one. He's got, I think, 6 or 7 other people on board from different countries and different backgrounds. And they're going to create a new website. And they did a podcast, I don't know, a couple days ago talking about it. But they really didn't get into specifics about what they're going to do over there.
Right.
But I think, it might be more of a, I don't know, I'm hoping it's going to be more of a way to flesh out the philosophies and the political ideologies.
Right. I remember what I was going to say earlier was that because there is no real head, there is, sorry, I was chatting with Brandon there for a second. There is, you have the Milo Yiannopoulos people who are calling themselves all right, but they're really, alt-light, like Richard
Right.
Spencer, said. And they're really just like anti-SJW warriors. They're not white nationalists. And I think that's kind of what makes someone an alt-right versus alt-light.
Yeah. It's about white identity politics.
Yeah.
And Richard Spencer has said that a million times.
So I agree with, as a white person with white children, I agree with the dictum, to some extent, secure an existence for white children, right? But I guess for me, it's not enough. If we're just going to secure, it's almost like these people think that I owe something to every white person because they're white and they suck air, right? And I don't agree with that because I care about quality. And I recognize that there's quality and there's just mediocrity in any group you go to, right? And so for me, it's yes, you need an existence for white people, for white children, if you're going to have quality people in the future. But if it's just about preserving the herd within the white, the white community, the white subspecies group, then if it's just about that, and if it's not about having a higher type, right, striving beyond mere humanity, mere mediocrity, the herd instinct, then to me it's really not really that worth it, for me anyways.
No, see, I understand what you're saying, and I've been going over that myself. And I think, within the white race as a whole, and if you just want to talk about the alt-right or the white nationalist movement.
Oh, and I should have said this. Hold on, I'm sorry. I should have said this before. Let me just preface that. I don't believe in any objective, superiority or inferiority or anything like that. I don't believe in any kind of, objective notion of better or, anything
No, it's
or
not
higher
about
or
that.
whatever. But I just wanted to throw that out there. But go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a point we should have brought up earlier.
Yeah.
There's nothing about that. They want to call us white supremacists and all this crap.
Right.
It's not about being a supremacist. It's not about being supreme. These are my people. This is my family. It's not about who's better or who's worse.
Right.
These are my people, and I'm going to protect me, my family, and my people. But, to get back to my other point, the idea about saving the entire white race, and this is kind of why I hope it actually comes about in a violent revolution, is to cull the herd a little bit. That might piss somebody off, but I don't care. We kind of need a night of the long knife, so to speak.
Oh, God. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I understand what you're saying there. You mean like if there's like a vast uprising and there's a civil war tomorrow, then a lot of the lesser specimens, shall we say, will be weeded out kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay. Kind of like, diseases do and, viruses.
But on the other hand, too, if we do get our own homeland, some white people won't want to live there. You got like these SJW types and these super liberal people, and they're going to think it's awful and horrible, like they think about Trump now, even though he hasn't done anything yet.
Right.
So if they leave too, that'll solve a large amount of problems right there.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to bring Brandon on here in a second. He's, I think he's getting something done or something. I think he's setting his stuff up. I don't know, his mic or something. Maybe firing up his laptop. Who knows?
Yeah, no, he messaged me like a half an hour ago.
Oh,
that
did he?
Was coming on.
Oh, did he? He's probably going to bring up the Jews.
Probably.
Probably going to rant about the Jews for a while. No. Yeah. I don't know. Like this year's kind of. It's been kind of a strange year. Like it's filled me with a little bit of hope. But oh wait, hold on. Here we go. Where at, man?
On the mic. Looking out Centralia.
What's all that? What's all that noise?
I'll give you just a second. There's a fan on the other end.
Oh, okay. If I was Cantwell, I'd be. If I was Cantwell, I'd be screaming right now.
Plus all the echo.
Yeah, I'm hearing that. Hold on, I'm gonna see what I can do about that.
Not better now.
Yeah, that's better. Is that better? Is there still an echo?
Better on my end too.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds okay. It's a little bit of echo on Brandon's end, but
Okay.
it's not that big of a deal.
I don't really hear it on my end, but say
It's only when
something.
he talks.
Say something, Brandon.
Sound better?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, I'm not hearing an echo. Are you still?
No, it's okay. It's not too bad.
Do you have headphones, Brandon?
Oh yeah, I can plug those in.
Yeah, that might help.
I got them plugged in.
All right, sweet. All right, is it still an echo?
No, it sounds good now.
Okay, so then the headphones. It's a little trick I learned a long time ago. Cool. All right, so, geez, we've been kind of hopping around here, Brandon, all over the place. So you should just bring up something.
I'm not sure how to comment.
We've been talking about a lot of things, but one of the things we've been talking about is the fact that the alt-right doesn't really have a kind of intelligentsia, like a leadership, so to speak. And I think the closest thing to that is something like, Richard Spencer, right? And I think you have negative views of Richard Spencer. Am I correct? Or am I thinking of somebody else?
I mean, him and all the people that the media seems to pick as a representative for the alt-right, I don't really agree with.
Yeah.
they seem to denounce ideologies like National Socialism and things like that, thinking that they're going to get more attention that way. And I don't think it matters what you say. You're always going to be a Nazi to them or whatever they want to label you as. So.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So like you're kind of like why not just give them that, because they're going to call you that no matter what. Like even Milo is going to be a Nazi to them, right? Even Milo and Yiannopoulos or yeah.
I mean, it's to be to the point now where they don't even take that seriously as an indulgent Nazi or racist. People should just be laughing it off at this point because they've ran it into the ground so much.
Yeah, the words become meaningless, kind of like the word fascist.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they don't have any clue about fascism. They never actually sat down and studied it economically or spiritually or anything. They just think it's about total control by corporations and government fused together. You're dictated by them. That's not even close to what it's about, And,
So maybe you could respond to the comment that it was a question that someone had asked when I made that post on my wall saying that we were going to have a show today. I asked people if there was any kind of like questions that they had, right, for us to consider and talk about. And one of them was concerning what they called leftist economics. So, hold on, I'll read it for you word for word again so that we can do it. And I know you'll probably have a different perspective than probably me or Dion here on this, but his question is, I'm sure this is already on the roster, but talk about the worship of socialism and the infiltration of the leftist economics and ideas in this purportedly right-wing movement. So how do you respond to that?
So people are starting to imply that the right wing is becoming more like leftist economics, thing? Or that seems to be what
Yeah, I think
right?
he equates socialism and that kind of thing as left-wing economics.
I understand why they think that. I mean, one time I was a radical leftist for some time, and I never really cared for socialism because it seemed like just a reformation of capitalism, or like trying to get the government to do things in a more social way, but it's still the government doing it, rather than like the community directly. So I see where they're coming from there, but I mean, like as far as like communism and socialism, I think that it's all the government, unless like you were to take the means of production in the hands of the people themselves, or certain tribes, and then there wouldn't be a government anyways, because the people would have the means to produce the bullets and everything. So if the government got a hand, it'd be like, oh, we're just going to stop making you ammunition, because they would have the means to produce everything themselves, So I mean, that's the only type of like socialism that I really agree with. But at the same time, if you had a society that was racially homogenous, then I think there could be class cooperation, because you have people taking pride in a nation and their own people at the same time. They're going to want to lift up, all their people to a degree, regardless of class. That way, they have a more secure, better society that way. But I mean, I got a lot of the Midas right views too. So, I got to find like a midpoint between it. But I don't understand why they would think that the right would be more along the lines of like leftist economics, other than I mean, we want to help each other first and foremost before we would be concerned about other nations. So I don't understand why they would see it in that kind of a way. If that's even what they're implying. I mean, I'm not sure the degree that they're implying that like the right economics are starting to become more like the leftist economics. But,
and even if you had a white ethno-state and a homogeneous society, you wouldn't need all these welfare programs and all these benefits that we have now. I think, a lot of that would be cut out.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, people would have pride in themselves and pride in their nation and their country. So they, like back in National Socialist Germany, where people had, patriotic feelings that they had to work to better themselves, their families, their communities, and their nation. So even if it was a socialistic government, it wouldn't really be the same as a communist government.
Yeah, it would be like Marxist socialism, because like the Germanic socialist view is like work rather than handouts from the government. It's like, oh, we want work, we want the means to reach our self-determination and better ourselves and then the nation as a whole. But we're not asking for someone to baby us or like take care of us. That's not the Germanic ideal at all. Like the Germans are thought of as very industrious people, so I don't think their view of socialism was Marxist anyways to begin with. So I don't understand how they came off with that kind of view.
I don't know. Like, do you ever listen to Cantwell's Radical Agenda or anything like that?
No, I don't think I've heard that.
Okay. Well, I think there are people that are coming from, I mean, as I said before, coming from a kind of libertarian perspective, and so they look at anything that is, socialism. They're coming from a very individualist perspective too, right? So when you talk about, and me included, so when you talk about, pride in one's country, nation, and all that, like for me, it's kind of too collectivist for me, right? Like it's okay for other people. I'm not trying to dictate how other people, in that sense, anyways, how other people are. Like I'm for collectivism for those people, those types of individuals that need that. But I'm just not one of those. So when I hear that, I'm kind of like, I'm not really into sacrificing myself to somebody's notion of the greater good, right? Does that make sense?
Oh, I understand where you're coming from there. I mean, I've debated people on that before, especially like anarcho-individualists, and I agree with that. Like people should just be able to be left alone. If they chose to live in the wilderness or whatever, that's fine. But on the same note, I mean, how would you do that if you didn't know how to produce everything on your own? Like you would have to, deal with other people. Otherwise, you'd be stuck living pretty primitively, don't you think? Because you would have a life long enough to learn how to produce everything, unless you just have, really simple, interests and wants. I mean, how would that work out? Do you think?
Right. Well, I'm not an anarchist, so I can't really speak to that. Yeah. But like
that was a nice school of thought, though. I had seen that would be along those lines. The real radical individualist types and things. I didn't mean it like a leftist, or the way people typically think of anarchists. I didn't mean it like that. But there are certain anarchist schools of thoughts like that, like anarcho-individualists, and you have the anarcho-primitives as well. Like they have a lot of views like that.
Yeah, like the people that wear masks that run around destroying shit and riots and all that. Yeah.
Well, I don't know about anarcho-individualists feeling that's more of the social anarchists, but the anarcho-individualists more about being left alone. Just doing their own thing. I mean,
they think in terms of property rights. So they think of sometimes they're called like propertarians or whatever, and they think of themselves as like, or maybe I'm more or less, I don't know about anarcho-individualism. I'm not sure if I'm thinking of that rightly. I think you're talking about like the people who hung out with Redbeard when he was writing back in the 1890s. They were kind of like individualist anarchism. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard a little bit about some groups of them in America before the Civil War. They did like labor for labor type of exchange and things like that. Like they didn't seem to be anti-property or anything like that, from what I gathered.
Okay, yeah. I was thinking of something more the lines of like right-wing libertarian. Well, no, just like, okay, you guys heard of like Adam Kokesh?
Yeah, he's sort of an anarcho-capitalist, I think.
Yeah.
What they call their school.
That's what I was thinking of, like something like that, because they think like, so they think any kind of immigration is a violation of the non-aggression principle, because you're forbidding other people to come on other people's property, right? So that's kind of like the perspective they're coming from. And then you have like Cantwell's thing where he's like, no, we got to have immigration as long as we have this government thrusted upon us. Like we need immigration. So there's kind of a bit of a split since the Trump phenomenon emerged, and now you have like Trumpertarians. So how do you feel about, and do you, like, Brandon, do you think that, because it seems to me that a lot of people I've met in the alt-right tend to have that kind of the same ideal that you have, like having a kind of reemergence of National Socialism. Is that something you see the alt-right as, for the most part? I mean, obviously there are many people in the alt-right with different ideas, but do you think that a lot of alt-right people will share your view on that?
I really don't know. A lot of the people that I've seen move over to that were more liberal, they don't really seem to identify so much with National Socialism, but I know they're definitely for, strong borders and things like that, but I don't think they're getting to, like, the root of the problems as far as, finance or anything like that, like the National Socialists would have by making their own currency to get out of, the Rothschild's grip and become debt-free. And I don't think they have a real radical view of getting to the root of the problem, really, I mean, some of it's more just trolling, or not necessarily trolling, but they're putting out information on the internet, and they were doing that to begin with. And now, the alt-right mind became more trendy, and they're just doing what they've always done. But so I don't think that they're very deep as far as like ideology or philosophy or anything like that.
So you're saying they're more like Republicans in as far as the economics is concerned and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'd say like about as radical as they go, they'd probably be like a Ron Paul or something like that. I don't know. I don't really see them like really well thought out, on National Socialism or philosophy or any of that.
What do you guys think of Brandon? I know you'd brought up yesterday when we talked briefly. I think I was on my way out the door, but you'd mentioned that Mike Enoch, the leader of the TRS, the Right Stuffed Up Biz, was recently doxxed, and turns out here he is on the air on the Daily Show, talking about gassing the kikes and all this other stuff, and yet he has a Jewish wife, and it turns out he might actually be Jewish. I was wondering what you guys have to say about any of that. Like, did you guys expect any of that, or
I heard people.
What's your view of TRS in general?
I heard several rumors, even that Milo guy, people saying he was Jewish, so I wasn't surprised at all, really. It wasn't surprising to me to hear that at all. It really wasn't.
I listen to TRS all the time because I listen to podcasts all the time. That's basically what I do at work all day. So it was kind of surprising to find out that his wife is a Jew and that he might actually be a Jew himself. And honestly, it pissed me off. And the fact that now, after all this came out, he's still going to be part of that program. He's still going to be part of that website. That's absolutely not acceptable at all.
I thought he was stepping down.
Yeah, that's what they said initially. And then a couple days ago, they did another podcast, and he said that he's sticking around.
Oh, I'll have to check that one out. I haven't seen it. Was he on that podcast?
Yeah, he was on there. He basically spoke the whole time. They did two this week. They did one with Rebel Yell, which is a Southern Nationalist podcast. And then they did the Daily Show Up. And they talked about all this stuff. And yeah, he's going to stick around.
So, does he admit that he's the guy they doxed, or because
Yeah, he comes straight out. He goes, "Yeah, I got caught, and basically too bad for you guys." But he didn't really address the fact that his wife is Jewish. He said he's separated now. He said he's getting a divorce. He got fired from his job. I don't know if I believe anything this guy says anymore.
Right.
Especially, why would he get divorced from his wife now? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I thought I heard that he was separated, that they were in the process of a divorce or something, that they were...
Yeah, that's what he said. He said, they're going to get a divorce. I don't buy that for a second.
Well, I don't know. I just think that's a very, if here I was married to a Jewish girl, the first thing that comes to my mind would be, hey, let's start up this website that talks about gassing Jews and, LARPing really hard in that direction. And then, it just doesn't seem like a very rational thing to do. Like, why would you put yourself in that circumstance? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Unless she was just totally horrible to him and that's part of his rage, I don't know. I mean, I guess I could see that. Like, if he had a really bad experience and she she burned him and now he hates all Jews or something. I mean, I don't know, like what his. It'd be interesting for me to hear what his, what like, I don't know what lit a fire under his ass to start something like this, especially being in that. I mean, in living in Manhattan, Jesus Christ, you know, like that is Jewish as hell. Like, how does that happen?
Was it profitable to him somehow to represent all right somehow? Like, was he profiting off of it somehow?
Actually, they were getting donations. You know, every show they had a donation segment, and I'm actually going to go back and listen to the last show and add up how much money they got. They got a lot of money even after this thing broke. A lot of people are donating. Somebody donated like over $1,000 to him.
So I mean, as long as he could keep his identity secret, then it's not going to affect him or any of his Jewish friends. So it's profitable for him. Then, but now, you know, if his identity's out there, then it might actually like interrupt his life somehow.
Well, you know,
That's what's going on.
Cantwell was like, you know, Cantwell had a controversy too, or like he was he went on a meth binge, right? And he made like 12 hours of recording of him high as hell, and he released it for his website and his podcast, and it was on YouTube. And I didn't listen. I listened to a couple minutes of it or so here and there, and then it was just entirely too long. And he was just rambling about all kinds of things, and you could tell he was, you know, high. And some people went away, but it seemed like most of them, you know, actually stuck around. And there was one guy that called in and said he was going to give him $1,000 or some shit like that. So apparently, you know, people just don't care about being genuine, I guess. I don't understand. Maybe it's more of like they're entertained, so they're providing these people money to keep the entertainment. You know, it's not really so ideological. I mean, I don't know.
That's the impression I had.
I think that's probably it. I think it's more entertainment than it is a political movement or an ideological movement. And they're just happy for the entertainment.
Right, because they're a bunch of trolls, and you know, so they like being entertained like that. Like that kind of thing entertains them, and it's going to be hard for people who don't know what we're talking about as far as the Daily Show to understand what we mean like by entertainment, because I'll admit they are pretty entertaining. They are kind of amusing, you know, here and there. They have some funny things that are kind of catchy, but at the end of the day, that's really all it is. There's no real substance to it, at least that I've seen. And actually, I was supposed to be a guest on there, like a guest philosopher, to talk about Nietzsche and nihilism. And then, you know, after I had my run-in with them on the forums, they were just, you know, Seventh Son just booted me permanently. So perhaps I'm a little butthurt about that, but I actually kind of looked forward to talking with people about that subject, because I enjoy talking about Nietzsche and I enjoy talking about, you know, that kind of thing. And I think there's a lot that I could have enlightened them about that they didn't know, but whatever. I mean, you know, that's fine. So perhaps I am a little biased against TRS. I'll admit that right now, but I don't really see them, other than spreading memes and putting out edgy shit, I don't really see them doing much.
No, they really didn't do much, but they did kind of start these, what they call pool parties, where different people in different areas kind of forming groups. I don't know what they were doing besides going out and getting drunk together.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know either.
No, that seems like that's the only thing they were doing, right? Really. Really.
Well, I heard that Mike Enoch. Okay, whatever you're doing over there, or is that you, Brandon?
Oh yeah, can you hear something?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Doritos.
Oh yeah, I was moving around some stuff, but yeah.
Just mute your mic when you do that, all right? Just mute your mic. No, what I was going to say was, I heard that, you remember that meeting they had I think it was in Washington, D.C., where they had that recent get together with Spencer and all that. They had that big conference. And
yeah, the NPI conference.
And you remember when Richard Spencer raised his glass, that all ended up in the news, and you had, hail Trump, hail victory. Or I heard, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard on some blog somewhere when Mike Enoch got doxxed that he was the one who first saluted. And so this guy had this kind of theory floating around that he was actually a Jewish like mole, kind of like where he infiltrated and he was like a provocateur, or he intentionally did that to make them seem like they were a bunch of Nazis, right? To discredit the movement or whatever.
No, see, I actually agree with that too, because after that happened on the Daily Show, he talked about he was the first one who did it.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Yes. So if it turns out this guy actually is a Jew, we know he was married to a Jewish woman. We know that much. He lives in Manhattan. There's another strike against you. And his last name is Panovich, which actually, if you look up the etymology of his last name, it's actually a Russian Jewish name.
Well, I knew it was like Russian or something, Slavic or something like that, but I don't know what the Jewish last names necessarily look like. So
it's completely possible or plausible that this guy is COINTELPRO.
Right.
And basically the whole idea of the website could have been a honeypot.
Makes sense. I mean, they could take the energy, the momentum of everything, and then they could channel into that, and it kind of redirects things in a way that's counterproductive and isn't going to lead to any actual, organization or change. That makes no sense.
Right. If all you're doing is releasing your energy by trolling and stuff, you're never going to actually do anything real, take any real action to actually do anything. But I will note that the right in general has never really been activist, right? Like,
no.
It's always the left you see out there marching and doing stuff, right? You never see Republicans, doing much of anything except for maybe protesting abortion clinics or something, right?
That seemed to have been changing the past few years, though. You've seen certain pro-white groups actually confront, Antifa and confront anti-white college professors. Like, you started to see more of that. I mean, with the National Youth Front, you'd seen some of that, but then as soon as Angela had a kid, he seemed to have backed down, and after he got married, and then it just kind of turned into success guru, motivational speaky type of guy, rather than, taking it to the streets and doing something. But, I mean, I noticed that it was going in that direction of action, Instead of just reacting, we were going to confront the anti-whites, so maybe it didn't seem to come about shortly after that was going about, you think, Dion?
Yeah, I think so too.
How do you Brandon, how do you institute your ideal? Like, how do you bring about the society you want to see? Like,
I've been thinking a lot about it, and I think the only way to do it, this will sound really collectivist to you, but we need to form a nationalist workers international to get the white working class people, as well as the more upper class people that are willing to work in class cooperation, get them together to form general strikes on a global level to bring down the global centralized capitalist class and this Jewish finance elite. And I think that's the only way to do it, because we can't challenge them militarily. If you look at Gaddafi, for example, people were living well there. They had gas for like 15 cents a gallon. They would send their people to any doctor they wanted in the world if they didn't have it available in their own country, and they were crushed. Not only that, he was going to unite the African peoples behind the gold currency rather than, the debt currency. And that would have got rid of a lot of the third world labor that the capitalist class uses actually to keep us down in the first world, because, by keeping them down, they don't have to respect us or give us a living wage so long as they can keep them oppressed to a greater degree. So, going back on that, if we had this nationalist revolution, say, we got power in Greece or something like that, they would crush them the same way they did Gaddafi. So it has to be a global coordination of the working class in the same way, the capitalist class is globally coordinating their efforts. If they can't get away with something in one country, they'll just skip over here and do it over there. So we have to act globally as well in our efforts to organize to bring them down, And like I'm saying, through attacking capital and doing it more in an economic way, we'll be able to bring them down, but it's not going to happen militarily. I don't think that's even possible,
Right. Well, I kind of want to I guess, qualify what I said before about collectivism. Like, I think there needs to be initially there needs to be some collective, like any movement is collectivist, right? It's a collection of people, right? So like there has to be a unity, right? In order to take down a common enemy. And the way I see it is like, and I mean, I'll use that as a means to an end, right? So for me, I'm an opportunist. That's what I'll do. But I think that if we don't put an end to leftists having control of academia, having control of the media, having control of all these things that are, pumping all of these propaganda shit into our kids' minds through, state school institutions and through, the TV box, which most kids nowadays seem to be sitting in front of the TV for, a long time while both their parents work, right? So you have, like, as long as you have this going on, you're just going to have them continuously produce new generations of brainwashed masses that are doing exactly what they're doing right now, marching in the streets, destroying private property, burning down, smashing Bank of America, and screaming for their, communist utopia. I mean, that's what you're gonna have. I mean, we cannot allow this to happen and sit back and be surprised when you have all these brainwashed kids filling the streets. Well, of course they are. Academia is just full of leftists, right? And I know people in academia that are afraid, that are not leftists, that won't say anything because they'll lose their job, right? So, like that's, if we don't do something about that, and I don't know exactly what that is, but I think that I will give TRS this, and that is that I think that it is important, like the memes and stuff to some extent. I don't think that should be all that we do, but I think that memes are important because important to the extent to which they shape public sentiment, and that's exactly what needs to happen. Public sentiment needs to be changed. It needs to be influenced, and in fact, that's what moral language is about. It's about expressing attitudes and influencing attitudes. So we need to. There needs to be more of that. There needs to be a kind of paradigm shift, if you will. There needs to be an end of political correctness, which Trump was kind of a blow to that already, and but yeah, there needs to be an end of this slave morality that has dominated the West through Christianity, and now through found its zenith in political social liberalism and cultural Marxism. It's all a hatred of success. It's all a demonization of success for those who they deem are powerful, those who they resent, which is white people, obviously. I mean, you look at, white people are privileged, white people are the only people that can be racist. It's just all, you need to feel bad conscience about your privilege. You need to feel bad about being white. You're the only people who can't organize. You're the only people who can't look after your own interests. It's an emotional. It's basically psyops, man. It's psyops. That's what it is. It's psychological warfare, and it's taking place in critical theory, as you mentioned when I was on your show in June. You'd mentioned critical theory, how that's infiltrated our institutions, our educational institutions, and now MTV. Jesus Christ, I remember when MTV actually played music, and it was like Beavis and Butthead, and I don't know what was that other one that show that spy chick. I can't remember. But anyways, Neon Flux. Neon Flux. That's what it was.
They took away Headbangers Ball. They said that was racist because I guess there were less white musicians in the like rock and metal genres back then. When they took that away.
What about Yo MTV Raps? That was all black, except you had like Vanilla Ice and crap on there. But
back to the whole, getting things changed in the academic world, like, what do you think about what Matthew Heimbach was kind of trying to go with the whole white students union thing as a way to do it? And even if we could get teachers to get involved as well, do you think that would be a way to go about making these changes that need to be made?
No, it's like cool. Like I'm actually down with a lot of that stuff. I think that's great. Like pointing out the double standard and all that stuff. I guess it's just when I get in groups with these people and then, like on Facebook or something and then like, as long as we're just focused on that, I'm fine with them. Like I get along. I think they're doing something, but it's like, I have to stay away from the religious stuff when I'm talking because, I don't believe any of that shit. So for me, it's kind of like I'm learning how to try to ignore that stuff and work together against a common enemy, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it points out what he did with the White Students Union. Then he had, what the freak's his name? The guy from ANRAM, I think it is, or American Renaissance.
Jared Taylor?
Yeah, he had him. That was actually a pretty good debate. Where he came and he debated about the White Students Union and stuff. He made some good points, And I think that's great, but I think there's also... Well, I think you can appeal to some people who are more rational. I think that the bulk of the masses are... You're just going to have to appeal to sentiment. Like, you're going to have to somehow try to influence public sentiment because it's not really about rationality with a lot of these people. I mean, fucking talk to these people. Jesus Christ. Look, they're so freaking stupid. Most of them are just so, uneducated with their, their head between their ass and their gender studies degree. Like these people are not the sharpest knives in the drawer, like, you're not really going to be convincing these people out of their cultural Marxist agenda. It's just not going to happen. I watch these people, who is it? I watch like Alex Jones, InfoWarrior people go out and, they film their little encounters with them and they they try to argue with these people, but these people don't have, in fact, this past summer, there were some feminists who were out in the square, here in Keene. They were out we have this place, it's called Central Square. It's like a big island with grass and there's like streets all around it. And it's part of the, where they filmed Jumanji with Robin Williams. And, people go out there and they protest and they hold up signs and shit. And there were these feminists out there and they were protesting against Trump. And, I went out there and I confronted them, right? And I was trying to reason with these people, and I just realized there's just no reasoning with these people. And then I came home, and I turned on YouTube, and there was Chris Cantwell. He had just encountered the same people. He was just screaming in their face, like he wasn't even trying to reason with these people at all, right? Because he realizes that these people are not about truth or reason. They just have this. They just have this sentiment, the way they want things, and they're trying to appeal to the violence of the state to institute it on everybody else. That's what it's all about. That's what politics is about. It's about will to power. It's about using the violence of the state to impose your will, your ideal society onto everybody else. And so, like Dion, you're looking towards more of a tribalist thing, which I think is more realistic as far as human nature goes, because human nature is tribalistic and 300 million people is too much we to enforce one ideal onto, right? Because there are so many different ideals of how society ought look. And so what you end up with is a false unity. And you're always going to end up with a civil war at some point because you're trying to, put this medium T-shirt on every size out there, and it's not gonna work because not everybody wants the same things. Not everybody has the same interests. We all have things in common, as far as we all want to suck air and we all want to eat and stuff, but there was a lot of different ideals of how society should look, and all these ideals within this great sea of me's of 300 and some odd million people. And then you have one centralized power trying to force everyone into this cookie cutter. Everybody's got to be, got to fit into this ideal. I think that America is going to continue to be a failed experiment. I really do.
Well, yeah, it's always been that way. And I think the founding fathers actually knew that. That's why they didn't want to put the sole seal of power in Washington, D.C. That kind of came after the Civil War. Each state was supposed to be basically their own country.
Right.
And held together by the federal government. But, after the Civil War, that all changed. And I think we really need to go back to that. And you see that in, even this last election. Basically, California could have won. Just California alone could have won Hillary the presidency. But thankfully, all these other states, basically all the other states in the entire goddamn country went for Trump. I think I read somewhere where there's like 3,000 counties in the United States and only 57 of them voted for Hillary.
Right.
So there's, you got Southern California, which has just a concentration of people with a completely different mindset, political ideology than the rest of the nation. And you have the same thing over in the Northeast. Well, mainly New York City, but and also you have the same thing in Southern Florida, which also has a high concentration of non-white people.
Right. Well, yeah, I noticed that in California when I lived in California. It was kind of like North California was a lot different than Southern California. It was more conservative, and then like South, obviously that's all infiltrated with lefties and Hollywood and all that stuff. That's all a different country almost, a different state, I should say. Even though California is pretty degenerate and big government to begin with, which is why I moved here to New Hampshire. It's a lot freer. One of the things I wanted to bring up was, speaking of New Hampshire, New Hampshire has this Free State Project where, all these libertarians move here to try to make a difference. They decided to concentrate in one geographic location. They figured they have, a better chance of making a difference in a state, and even perhaps in the future having the state secede from the United States government, right? And they figure they have more of a chance of doing that. What do you think of something kind of like that, where we'll just say New Hampshire just for shits and giggles, but let's say that I don't know, Richard Spencer tomorrow said, hey, everybody, let's fucking move to New Hampshire and create a white nationalist state. We'll just fill New Hampshire up with white people, and then there'll be, with white nationalists, and there'll just be no room for anybody else. Would that be more realistic than trying to change everything through some other means, like nationalist means? Or how viable do you think that would be?
You want to make a comment on that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, anyways, Obama, he said that he was going to use HUD to diversify any area that was predominantly white. So there you have a genocidal program to ensure that doesn't happen.
Well, going back to your question there is something already like that. It's called the Northwest Imperative. It's the idea that we're all going to move to Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and basically right now it's only half of Montana, which I'm not really sure why they picked half of Montana. But anyways, there's this idea that all the whites are supposed to move to the Northwest, and we're supposed to create our own country that way. And that's been going on for, 20, 30 years already. And basically Harold Covington is the one who's kind of putting that out there right now. But there is an idea like that, and I don't hate that idea. I don't have anything against the actual concept of that, but it's to get people. See, here's the problem with the way that they're doing it right now. He just keeps asking for people to just move out there on their own. What he needs to do is build communities. You know, he's got people scattered all over the place. None of them know each other. None of them have any type of organization whatsoever. He needs to organize it better and have communities built up already so people can go out there and, you know, get a foothold.
Right.
You know, you just can't tell people, hey, come move next door to me. It'll be great. You know, people got to, you know, save money and, you know, you might live on the other side of the country. You got to uproot and find a new job and all this and that. If you have no support base, people are going to be reluctant to do that.
Yeah, and you might get a bunch of dysfunctional people too. I mean, if you're just saying, "Hey, all white people move here," I mean, that's including all the dysfunctional people. Like, I mean, all kinds of lifestyles. You know, like I don't know, alcohol addiction. You know, maybe they have a certain immaturity level, so they have drama in and out of their life. You don't want to live next door to somebody like that. Somebody who's partying all the time. Somebody who has, I don't know, somebody who's a thief. I mean, there's all kinds of shit that, like, you kind of want to. When you move somewhere, you kind of want to know that you're not moving into a shithole, right? And the same thing when people are coming in, you kind of want to, you know, that's why they have like neighborhood, what the hell do you call those? Like, they have like committees or something, you know, where they have certain rules and stuff about what you can and cannot do in your own lawn, because it like.
Like the homeowners association.
Yeah, like that, right? So like you know, you have some sort of standard. And I guess if you're just like, hey, all white people just move here because you're sucking air, then that's probably going to create a problem, you know. But I see what you're saying. Like, you kind of need, like, Jack Donovan has this kind of idea, like, where, you know, we're in the culture of nothingness. And I don't know, have you guys read any of his books, like The Way of Men or any of that stuff?
I have, and that's his lecture on the New Barbarians.
Yeah. So that one, then you know what I'm referring to. Like, he talks about the nothing and like globalism and multiculturalism is like the culture of nothing. It's like the nothing from that 80s movie where you have Treyu or whatever his name is, and there's like the nothing is like eating up the universe. Well, you kind of have that, like, where you have all these plastic identities, and what he's trying to get rid of that and actually get people to connect and form tribes, right? And that's what he's been doing with his own life, is he's been building a tribe of his own, of people that he can trust, people that he can turn to. And he says, you know, don't like broadcast, you know, like in the newspaper or something, hey, we're setting up a white only area over here. Just move next to each other and you know, deal with each other and do business with each other and you know, become a tribe, basically, you know. And he's gotten into some of the, I think, kind of the white paganism kind of thing. And I think he's agnostic, but he just kind of goes into that for ritual or whatever. He writes about it in his book, Sky Without Eagles. But I think there's some value in that. I mean, I think that there is something, as much as I hate to say it, there is something in this idea of keeping people atomized. And although I disagree with the alt-right when they say that feminism is individualism, it's not, it's collectivism. Like, I don't know where the hell they're getting that from. But I don't agree that that is, you know, making people individualism. But for whatever reason, since we need an alliance and since we need to align against a common enemy, it makes sense that we would form alliances with one another and that we would form communities, right? And try to drop out of this statrix as much as possible and depend on one another instead of the multiculturalist state or whatever.
As far as like starving the state or the feds out. I mean, how would you do that if we're not allowed to revert back to something more primitively, long enough to do it? I mean, they try to make that impossible nowadays, don't they? They want to ban fireplaces and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Which state you go to, you got to actually, look into that and research. Like I know in Tennessee, you can basically do any goddamn thing you want to.
I bet about the time we all gathered there and started to do it, though, then, the feds would step in. That's kind of what they exist for, is to keep the state from organizing on a state or local level. That's kind of their purpose, to step in, once things get going,
Yeah, but the problem is we can't really worry about that. And that's the problem. People worry about it too much and worry about what might happen. It might not happen at all. If we form our own communities, basically like they're doing in South Africa, where they have these all-white communities where everybody gets together and supports each other. We can't sit there and, worry about the future, what might happen if we try to do something. We just got to do it. It's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. And, the problem with Craig Cobb, when he did it, when he put it all over Stormfront or CNN, I think it was CNN, and then the Jews found out about it. He went about it the wrong way. He had a great idea, he just did it the wrong way.
I've talked to people from creativity movement before, and they have kind of a similar idea of doing that. You kind of living like the Amish or something, but they said when they like try to look like everyone else, like more blend in more, not stand out or anything, but, when they go back to their community, they're doing their own thing, but they're not bringing attention at the same time, so, that's what you mean.
Right. And there's communities like that all over the country. It's just like nobody knows about it because nobody talks about it.
Yeah, I guess the majority of society is on the pistis level of knowledge, according to Plato. They just look at the image and that's it, so, they just look at the surface and they're not going to go any farther, so they wouldn't really know what's going on,
Right, and I try to get people on to my show to talk about the PLE concept, the Pioneer Little Europes, and I can't get anybody to talk to me about it. They'll talk to me privately about it, but they won't come on the podcast to talk about it.
Right. That's, well, I mean, it's a high risk right now. There's a lot of people that have a lot to lose, and I've always been out front, I've always, had my real name on YouTube and Facebook and all that. Actually, when I first started out, I used like Ubermensch Atheist, I think, on Facebook. And then someone reported it as a fake name, so I ended up using my real name. But I didn't have it because I was trying to hide behind a name. I had it because that was my brand, right? And so if I could have just had it Atheist on Facebook as one name, that would have been great. But they kind of want two names. They want a first name and a last name at least. So, yeah. So I've never hidden behind that. I'm a very brutally honest person. So it's hard for me to understand that, but I kind of do to some respect. I could imagine myself in a situation where I have a family to take care of and I have a job that's very volatile. It's very volatile. It's very if people found out I was for this or that agenda, then I could lose my job. And then you have, you've got kids to feed, right? And that's difficult. So I can kind of understand that, that's difficult, and it's sad when you have to actually choose between those things,
Right. But the other side, you got to think of the way the media and especially the federal government sees people like me and Brandon. We're, ultra extremist right wing terrorists.
Well, yeah. Yeah, you guys are Al Qaeda or something.
Yeah. Sometimes people use pseudonyms and things. I did that some for fun. I used to use the William Krieger pseudonym, but I don't even bother with it anymore. I just go on in.
Yeah, well, you've gotten shut down so many times, probably like me, you know.
Yeah.
I've been flagged so many times on Facebook, it's not even funny. Just for being myself, but, you know, not even really saying anything like we're talking about now. This is just other stuff, you know, so.
You could even go into a group where they debate radical social science stuff, and you know you'll still have some liberals in there that'll scroll down your timeline and see like the first mention of Jew or whatever, and they'll get you banned for 30 days. That's what they do.
Yeah, that's difficult, man. You know, but that's, I mean, like I said, that's what happens when the left is in control of all the narrative, the media narrative, of the narrative that's being pumped into kids in college, you know, and you go into college and you're this kid who doesn't know shit, and college professors are seen as an authority figure that knows way more about things than you do, and you've come there to learn, and so you're going to pretty much soak up everything they tell you as the gospel, you know. There's very few people that go into college and that question everything they hear and take shit with a grain of salt.
I've seen a talk before. It was talking about how, you know, the Jesuits actually founded the colleges and things so they could get in between the Bible or anything and filter it out in the way they want. So it's kind of like they've done the same thing, you know, with like political ideology and everything, how they have it, and then they make you take it all the way they want. You know, they don't want you to actually observe it yourself or see hypocrisy in it. You know, they want you to see it their way only. It kind of goes back farther, I guess, if you consider that, how they started the colleges with their religion and everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't done any reading on that. I'm not really sure about the origin of colleges or anything like that. But, I mean, you could be right. I don't know. You know, I just know what's happening now. I don't really, you know.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the beginning of it. But I heard talks before, too, that Jews dominate the Ivy League now, and they try to keep only other Jews in it. So I don't know. I don't know about even changing that, you know.
So, but you don't think that, like, every Jew on this planet is in some conspiracy, do you?
I don't think that it's that way. Not like, you know, there's just like in any other organization, you know, you got people that just go along with, you know, what the leaders are doing. You know, they don't think about it that deeply. So I'm sure the majority of the Jews are ignorant. I mean, I'll give you an example. I was at a Free Gary Yarborough march, and there was a Jewish guy in the crowd, you know, that was a leftist. He was like, "Oh, my family was incinerated," and I was like, "Well, you know, Hitler had a fuel shortage, so how would he even manage to do that? You know, he would have needed the fuel for other things, and like he's gonna burn bodies in holes, and that's not even possible."
That's why he had That's why he had a fuel shortage, because he was using it all on the Jews.
Yeah, like he's gonna use that in the middle of a war when he needed it, you know, to defend himself. And everything.
Don't you know that fat people just burn up like gasoline because they have all that extra fat, you know, and you know and when they're really skinny, you know, they just incinerate, you know. Yeah, no, like
that guy was Jewish and he agreed with me, and then he was saying, "Well, I think the Jews are kind of weird myself," and the guy was Jewish. You know,
I'm not one of the. I'm not, but just for people listening to this later, I'm not one of those people that think that the Holocaust didn't happen, but I do think that it's very possible that it probably not everything happened the way the official narrative says it did. You know, like I'm sure a lot of people died and stuff, but at least as far as I'm concerned, I'm not speaking for everybody else on this, you know, on this show right now, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see that it was dramatized to some degree, or, you know, the numbers were maybe made, you know, the amount of people that died maybe wasn't 6 million, but it was something significantly lower, you know, than that.
There were even 6 million Jews in the whole of Europe at that time, and the Red Cross confirmed stuff like that. But they'll show you a picture of a skinny dead Jew, and they're like, "Oh, they were starved to death," but they don't tell you that typhoid fever makes you sweat out body fat, and that's why they were that skinny. You know, or they don't show you how they all had gardens or anything like that. And plus, they boycotted Germany, and then everybody declared war on them. So what do they expect? You know, of course, there's only shortages of things. So, I mean, how was that the Germans' fault? It's not their fault.
Right. Well, there, you know, it just seems like, I guess one of the things that like kind of turned me off too about the alt-right is like everything is the Jews' fault, right? Like everything, it always comes down to some big Jewish conspiracy. It reminds me of Alex Jones with his, you know, all his conspiracy theories, right? And
Well, that's their nature, and that's what they're going to do. You know. So,
but I don't know if that's every single Jew nature. And when you say Jews, you're kind of talking about. It sounds like you're talking about every single Jewish person on this planet. And I know of one Jew in particular who's not like that, you know, and so it's hard for me because like it sounds like when you say the Jews, it sounds like you're talking about some mass conspiracy of when it could be like a conspiracy of upper class Jews or something, right? Like
as in the Jews, I mean, that's like would they protect the ones that are doing that? You know, in the same way like a not radical Islamists would, you know, be okay with a radical Islamist cutting someone's head off. I mean, so are they opposed to? Are they openly going to stand up against what they're doing at the same time?
Yeah.
But they're claiming not to be that way. You know?
No, I know what you mean. They're like complicit in it or something, but I don't think a lot of Jews understand what's going on, right? I think there are a lot of Jews that are just living their life. Like, take Dave Mustaine from Megadeth. Do you think Dave Mustaine is part of some Jewish conspiracy? Like, seriously? Like, you know, he may be Jewish, he may have some Jewish blood, but he's basically French, right? And he makes heavy metal music. He doesn't get involved in politics too much, other than, I mean, he's in the Alex Jones conspiracy stuff, but he's not really like, he's a Jew, but he's not a Jew, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
In like the way you're thinking, right?
I mean, I was just kind of emphasizing how indifference can be just as bad, you know? That's what I was trying to say. Indifference entirely for someone that claims to be Jewish, you know, through their indifference, they're enabling it anyways.
I don't know, where are you at, Dion, on the Jewish question or whatever? I mean,
Okay, so the whole thing is not about the Jews. The problem is that if you look back in all these leftist ideologies, whether it be feminism, communism, socialism, yeah, they all originated with Jews. And it's this mindset of this other. And this is the mindset they've always had for thousands of years. You know, you gotta go back historically when you're talking about Jews. They've always been this way. With their usurous system, the banking system, and now they're ingrained in the media, academia, the financial system. Everything that basically controls our lives is disproportionately run by Jews. If you look at the Supreme Court, it's 1/3 Jew. And we're talking about 2% of the United States population controls all this stuff. You know, it's kind of a big deal.
so what is there some sort of like hidden cabal or something? Are these people like, how are they all getting elected to be in these positions of power? Are they just Jews stick together so they, you know, like, I'm not fully understanding, I guess.
You can pay the Congress. I mean, if you paid everyone in Congress thousands or billions of dollars, they're pretty much going to go along with whatever you want. Can't they just make someone the president if they want? I've heard people say that's what they did with Bush.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like, I'm not trying to be an apologist or anything. I'm just trying to understand. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to understand where this idea comes from and how valid it is. But you know, because I'm skeptical about everything. But I like, you know, I kind of look at it like you know, the 9/11 truth movement. Right, and they talk about all these different things about, the towers couldn't have free fall like that, you know, like they're just not constructed that way, and they go into all these, you know, theories of why the Twin Towers couldn't have, you know, imploded the way they did, and so I look at it kind of like, yeah, maybe that's true. I don't know though, you know what I mean? It's I'm just kind of like agnostic about it. I'm afraid to say, yeah, I'm on board with that, but at the same time, I'm not going to say it's false either, because I wouldn't doubt that. I mean, there obviously are a lot of Jews in academia and in Hollywood, obviously, and even the media, right? There's a lot of Jewish influence, for sure. But how far that goes, I'm not really sure. You know, like whether they get together behind the scenes on Jekyll Island and they're all plotting together and rubbing their hands together, you know, like some Gargamel or something. I don't know, like how far that goes. You know what I mean? I don't know how intentional or conscious they are of what they do either.
Well, I mean, go back to Nietzsche as well as Notley said that the true aristocracy was battle-bred Franks, like Germanic warriors. I mean, the Jews, if you think about it, like they've always been merchants, no, more or less, like not warriors. So like, when they want to invert that whole idea of that being what's noble and heroic and the culture and turn it around, kind of like what we have now, what they've done in Bollywood, how they're promoting vice and degeneracy and make society weak because they thrive best when we're like that. And there's a lot. You're talking about how many stupid people there are, like. Wouldn't you say they created a dysgenic program that breeds those kinds of people?
I don't know if they.
Profitable?
Here's the thing. Let me put it this way. I think maybe this will help you see where I'm coming from. So, Nietzsche talked about the inversion of master morality, through slave morality, through the Jews, through the first century underclass of the Roman civilization, which was Christianity. And so he believed that this was it's not that he thought that this was some conscious plot, right? It was more like it was in the nature of the Jews. This was with of people in general, people in the underclass who happened to be Jews, who used their way of gaining power was to use slave morality and to subvert master morality, right? That was their way of gaining power politically and otherwise. And so it wasn't that he thought there was some huge group of Jews that got together and they all schemed and we're going to invert, these values and stuff. It was more like it's in the nature of these people to do that, of the slave mind to do that, right? And so that's what I'm kind of saying is maybe it's not so conscious. Maybe it is just kind of because they've been in that position and they've developed these kind of values that are in response to master morality. Like you look at culture Marxism, that's exactly what culture Marxism is it's a hatred of success. It's a hatred of everyone has to be equal and everybody, it's a resentment, it's derived from resentment, right? Resenting those people. Like you talk to leftists and they're pissed off at corporations and people who have a lot of money and they talk about the 99% versus the 1%, right? It's this fucking resentment that they have, right? Because they have this slave morality and slave morality is derived from ressentiment, right? So it's not I'm not sure that it's just Jews. It's just the nature of the herd animal in general, which there are herd animals in, the white, European race or subspecies, or whatever you want to call it as well, right? That think like this. And of course you could argue that's because the Jews in academia have brainwashed them or something. That would be a valid retort, but...
Well, I mean, back then it may have been a class thing with the Jews, because masculine virtues were the thing of the day. The ancestral gods were all about masculine archetypes, and the Jews weren't warriors, so they couldn't really thrive in that. So now that they've dominated everything through finance, the classism is not a big deal to them, so they could care less because, if they own everything, and everything's ran by the merchant class, then it doesn't matter whether they're warriors or not because they'll just pay off, whoever they want to fight.
Right, well...
So, in the beginning, it might have been a class thing, but now I don't think that even matters to them. So to say it's from resentment based on class, I don't think it is, and I think it's more resentment based on, masculinity versus their femininity or their just merchant ways or whatever,
Yeah, I want to bring it back to a point that James made just a little while ago. It's not that they have this secret cabal where the happy, the alt-right meme of the happy merchant rubbing his hands together.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, they don't all get together and have these, maybe they have some sort of meetings, but they don't have all these meetings where they conspire against to, control everything. I think it's part of their culture since the dawn of time.
I just think it's entirely too simplistic to think of it that way, right? I think it's too convenient, right? I think it's got to be more complex and nuanced than that. But go ahead, sorry.
I was just saying, in the natural order, you have the aristocratic warriors that lead, and they wouldn't be able to thrive in that kind of society. So, they're going to push the whole merchant thing and everything being a market and everything being marketable, rather than a society where this actual battle selection, and people are fighting it out, like you're not holding land. So even the ancient Anglo-Saxons, they'd have you throw an axe, and that's how much land you could actually lay hold to. You're strong enough to throw that axe and mark that land, and you can stand on that land. But imagine the Jew trying to do this with holding the Talmud all day. He said, how far is he going to throw that axe? So of course they're going to demonize that kind of virtues in society.
Well, I'm sure Vin Diesel could throw it pretty far. I don't know. I mean, but I think you're generalizing. But yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, all Nietzsche was saying, and all I'm saying is that these virtues benefit weaklings, and so they have these virtues that make them equal, right? Equality. The notion of equality is like, if you don't have the kind of power that other people have, then it's in your interest to get institutional power through slave morality. Oh, everybody's got to be equal. Not everybody is equal, so we got to make everybody equal. We gotta have an imposed equality, right? And that's kind of like this idea of like, everybody's got to be equal. We need to hate success, and we need to give everybody participation trophies, and like that's that whole idea of like,
they're never asking for like a living wage, or pointing out how the Jews might own all the stuff, or have all the money. They would never bring that up. So it's almost like they're being manipulated in a way to give them even more power. If you think about it, because they're not asking, well, who has all the money or who owns everything. They don't do that.
Now
they're just talking about feelings as far as like the radical left and the liberals now. It's like they're not really concerned with material conditions being equal or anything like that. It's more about feelings and all the other stuff now. It's not even about class anymore. It doesn't seem like.
Just watch yourself, lest ye be, resenting Jews for their success, because Jews overwhelmingly have high IQs, on average, right?
They're just vocal. It's not visually. Like if you look into their IQ stats, it's more of a speaking thing rather than other types of intelligence. But they don't ever bring that up, though.
Oh, there are a lot of Jews in biology and physics, and you take like Professor Lawrence Krauss, who I mentioned earlier. He's Jewish, and he's one of the top physicists. And there are a lot of very, very intelligent Jewish people, right, that are high up in academia, and
Well, I mean, if they dominate, then they can control it, and who gets in it,
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that don't become resentful for their success, because then you're doing the same thing, right? Then you're deriving from resentment.
Outside of academia, though, because you're only going to get funding through the academic world if it's okay with them. They're not going to do anything that's going to like be radically efficient or make the world less dependent upon them anyway. So that all just seems like a racket to me.
Right. Well, you're going to get funding if you go along with the narrative, right? Of the political correct.
I guess that's good for them.
But no, I understand what you're saying. We can't play the victim card.
You can, but then you're basically being a slave moralist at that point.
Right.
I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's fine with me. But that's not where I want to go. That's not how I think. It's not. I'm not going to envy somebody because they're successful. I think that's great. If someone has that kind of success, that's pretty cool. But
I think success is based upon money, though. It just doesn't seem like the natural order of things, to everything be based on money.
Oh, I was talking about intelligence. And generally, people who are intelligent make pretty good money, right?
See, if it wasn't based on money, though, do you think that they would still be in the position they are? Like back when we had aristocratic warrior societies, they weren't at the top back then because it wasn't based on money. They were based on honor and battle selection. Like they wouldn't. Their so-called intelligence, they didn't get anywhere back then.
I don't know.
They destroyed the Greek society by taking all the gold into their temple so they couldn't pay their soldiers and military.
I don't know a shit ton of Jews or anything like that, but I would say there'd be a lot. If we had a battle society where like you had to battle who's going to be king or in charge or something, I don't suspect there'd be a lot of people who would win that one. Like I think most people. I mean, exceptional is above average by definition, right? So like if you're, like I'm pretty smart, but I'm not the biggest dude. I'm like 5'7". I probably wouldn't win against Arnold Schwarzenegger. He'd probably, tear me in half. But there are like different kinds of power, different kinds of strengths that people have, and I just think that, from what I've observed, anyways, it seems like Jews have pretty high IQ on average, and that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that if we had it like where only the strong ruled and only the strong were successful, then yeah, the Jews would probably be at the bottom, right? It just depends on what your measuring stick is.
It just seemed like the society more based on battle selection and honor. It's like as I go back to the Greeks, they destroyed them by taking all the gold into the Jews' temple, and they couldn't pay their military. So it's like they've always dominated and gotten power through finance. Like I don't think they've ever fought their own battles, really. I mean, even today, Israel, we give them how many billions and billions of dollars, and not only that, Israeli soldiers wear diapers because they poop their pants because they can't fight. So I'm saying, like, innately, they're different from us when it comes to masculine virtues and warrior culture, and that's why they set it up the way it is now, where the merchant class dominates everything,
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you that I don't think that the Jewish civilization has been a warrior culture. I mean, maybe in the Old Testament, but to some extent, but I mean, definitely not like something like the Vikings or, the Spartans or something like that.
I don't know what I'm saying. I just don't think they're as smart as people make it out to be. They may have monopolized on finance, but that's the only where I see them having any control and power, So, I'm just saying, go back to Midas, right? You like that? Well, the way they get power just doesn't seem along those lines, or it doesn't seem like the natural order to me at all,
So if the Jews were, let's say we lived in a parallel universe where the Jews were actually, on average, stronger than you, then would you say that they should rule you?
I mean, if they were stronger than me and better fighters, then I would respect them. But I'm not going to respect a guy just because he was able to weasel his way around like some sniffling courtier and make a bunch of money to pay all the sellouts from every race to
I see what you're saying.
around
Okay.
me,
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So you respect power then. You respect like fortitude and physical strength and honor and those kind of like master virtues, right?
Yeah, I find that more honorable, than anything they've done to gain power, really. It's kind of disgusting how they've gone about it to me, it just doesn't seem Germanic to me that way, or the way they go about, getting power.
All right, let's not turn this into a support group for Jew hatred or something. I don't want to spend the whole episode doing that. Not that I'm trying to be like, trying to be an apologist again. I'm just trying to like maybe we should move on to something else, or I don't know, bring this to a close or something. We've been going on for an hour, 2 hours and 16 minutes, something like that. I don't know. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add or anything?
I couldn't add much more about us having to go really in depth with everything, and if you don't want to go farther, then probably better not comment anymore.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered everything that we were going to talk about. Oh, actually, no, there was one thing that we're going to bring up and talk about is the this concept in the alt-right now that they're talking about. They're becoming more Christianized, these Christian values that they're trying to push on the people, and they try to talk about how LARPy and I don't know what's the word I'm thinking of. The concept that being pagan is going too far in the traditional sense.
Right.
Yeah, me and you were talking about that a little bit a couple weeks ago, and somebody at TRS wrote some article about that.
Oh yes, it was overreaction. I think the post was called, and I think it was posted in 2013, and it was in reference to Redbeard, and it like they were basically just. This is the thing that kind of pisses me off is that. For one, I don't think the guy who wrote the post really understood Redbeard, and he was coming from a Christian perspective. And for another thing, when these kinds of people want to discredit something, instead of actually attacking the real position, they'll call it edgy or some other some other like slogan that they throw around in the alt-right. Autistic or LARPy, autistic. You
So
know,
ad hominem attacks.
yeah, exactly, yeah. What were you saying in reference to that? I'm sorry.
Oh, we've been kind of going through this. The white nationalist movement has had this same problem since forever. You got the pagans on one side, you got the Christian identists on the other side. And the Christian identists always bring this crap up, how Europe was controlled by Christianity for thousands of years, and they bring up this idea that it held Europe together.
Yeah, so it's like the glue of civilization, and Christianity is. It's like this. It's a fallacious argument, but it's like this argument of it's that utility over truth thing again, where it's like, well, I just believe this because it's the glue of civilization. Well, that's great, but it's not true. It's false, right? It's just another mythology, and I don't feel like we need to be retreatists and retreat into some myth. Like, we can move forward as a people, as individuals, and not retreat back into myth because we think it'll unify us. Well, I think we can have values, the values of the Vikings or whatever, and get rid of the myth stuff that we know is false, the cosmology, the theology, all that stuff. Like, I'm kind of an atheist agnostic. I don't know a lot. Some of that's false. I can't disprove that God, I can't disprove God's existence, but I have no good reason to believe it, right? So I don't see any reason to. And then there's the Christian values, which is another thing that I reject. And I've argued that, look, it's actually the opposite of that, because every Christian nation, supposedly, is now overtaken by SJWism. What does that fucking tell you? You don't see that happening in Islam, right? And the reason is because, as Nietzsche stated, Christianity is the precondition for these types of things, like these, this slave morality and political, social political liberalism, cultural Marxism, all that stuff is the logical conclusion, like slave morality taken to its most logical conclusion, right? And that's how I see it. It's an intensified version of slave morality. It's slave morality without the God, and it's also more extreme, right? Because now, Christianity starts off with, exalting the humble and exalting the meek and the weak, and mediocrity. It's an exaltation of weakness, whereas mass morality was the opposite of that, as we were just talking about. And so we have social political liberalism, which has come out of that. Now it's not just equality before God, it's equality before the law. So now you have this equality being focused in a political sense, right? And so you have this ressentiment of a religion that's now become ressentiment without the theology, and has manifested in a political format. And so that's how I see it. So I don't see it as the glue. I see it as the ultimate destruction of Western civilization.
Yeah, I mean, what they're doing is definitely secular Christianity. That radical, it's just a secularized form of Christianity without the religion, but it's the same intent and the same values and everything. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Christianity has always softened the European spirit. It's been that way for 1,000 years. They want to talk about Christianity being the glue that held Europe together, while Charlemagne was killing his neighbors for not being Christians. You have the Moors invading Spain. So don't tell me that Christianity held anything together.
Right. Well, I'll say this. Like, I think that the kings of Europe at that time accepted Christianity because it was a power structure that made it so other kings in that community couldn't attack you, right? So if they wouldn't attack a fellow Christian, so it was a way for those kings to gain power, right? And of course, there was a lot of people who resisted that. I'm sure there was, even though the king had become Christian, there was probably a lot of, people that weren't, in the aristocracy that rejected it and that still wanted to cling to their, their paganism, but they were force converted. They were probably tortured and killed as heretics at some point.
Right, absolutely. That's exactly what they did. They converted everybody by the sword or by threat of death.
Right. But yeah, I guess that's where I have a problem with that. I don't see where they're coming from that, and in fact, a lot of the things they're trying to do seems to be, I don't know, it seems to be anti-Christian morality. It seems like they're trying to, some of them at least seem to be trying to, they, first off, have heard this narrative that it's actually a European religion, which I think is just absolutely laughable.
Right.
And then I hear this thing that these kind of conspiracy things where Jesus is actually he's actually not Jewish, he's European, right? And just crazy shit like that. Like they'll do anything to hold on to this myth, right? Anything just to hold on to it. And I can understand that because it's been part of European history for 2,000 years, or maybe a little less than that, but for a while. And so it's at least as far as like Northern Europe and that area. So I can understand that, like, there's probably, that's how they grew up, and they grew up in Christian homes, and they're trying to preserve that, and I kind of get that, but at the same token, I see it as the very source of the very issues that we face today with, cultural Marxism and all this other stuff we're battling. So, I don't know, that's how I see it.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And, they have this ideology that, you have to believe this or either you're the ultimate evil or you should be sentenced to death. And the fact that, throughout Christian history, it's been done through force, and they don't understand that, or they just ignore that fact. And that's what you were saying before, truth over utility. They ignore parts of history that go against their belief.
Right.
Like thinking Jesus was an Aryan.
Right. Well, I see this, to be fair, I see this on the pagan side. It's just a problem with faith in general. Like, people want to hold on to these beliefs. Like, I've heard a lot of, like, cognitive dissonance and crazy arguments. Like, I was arguing with this guy in this Nordic pagan group, and he was basically willing to give up truth in order to keep his beliefs. Like you say, well, everything's subjective, right? And it was just like, Jesus Christ, well, then your statement is self-refuting. Then that statement itself is subjective, right? It's not true, it's just subjective, right? Truth is what's universal, like for all of us, right? Like this, I'm breathing air right now, and there's relational properties around me, and there's, 1 + 1 = 2, right? That is true in my mind and in yours. So, like, he was willing to give up truth in order. That's why I call it retreatist, right? Because they're wanting to go back and retreat into hide in some sort of irrational thing in order to hold on to something, right? And I just don't think it's necessary, and I don't think it's beneficial. And a lot of people like to argue that myth is what holds the people together. And I think there's some truth to that. I think that myth does hold the people together, but I don't think it has to be the thing that holds people together. I think values can hold people together, right? And while values aren't true, they're things, they're feelings, they're sentiments that you have, you can still recognize that. Like, I'm a moral nihilist, and I recognize that there are no moral truths, but I still have my own subjective morality, things that I value, characteristics that I value, like honor, and strength, and, things like that. Like, I have a kind of master morality but I recognize that it's not true. It's not like, me describing a glass that's on the table, or, the migration of birds or some shit like that. It's not scientific, right? But it's still my sentiment. It's still how I prefer things, right? And people that share those values will get along great with me. We'll have that kind of glue between us because we share those values. There doesn't need to be any myth about it. I can recognize those values for what they are and still, and they'll still work. They'll still do their job, right? I don't know. That's where I'm coming from. Maybe you guys have a different view on that. But.
And I practice wokenism myself, and I see the gods more as representing, master morality and the virtues that are in the list that they did. But I see it more as like patterns of consciousness. I don't have a dogmatic view of the gods, and I've also noticed that the Anglo-Saxon kings, they trace their lineage directly back to Wotan, and some people have a theory that he could have been a Scythian king that migrated to Sweden. So, for all I know, he could have just been a great king also, that eventually became a god, through myth or legend. But regardless, I find it really motivating, to identify with the gods, and when we come together and assemble, we'll boast of our accomplishments or what we intend to do or things our ancestors did, and I think that does make us stronger, to speak of the ancestors and the heroes and what they accomplished, and it's inspiring, And plus, another thing about myth is it could represent a prehistory that we no longer remember. For example, if you have in the Ragnarok, the sky going dark, that could be like the comets hitting the Earth, and then the sky blacking out. It could just certain parts of it can represent what we no longer understand as far as history through oral tradition and things like that. But no, I don't see it in a dogmatic way. I don't think it's a retreat to some dogmatism to try to ignore, things in the present world. I think it translates into the present world, and it can be a source of power for us even today,
Right, so you've kind of naturalized it, kind of like made it metaphorical in a way that kind of works for you, kind of thing.
I don't know how much you know about the Nordic cosmology, but I've seen some people try to compare it with physics, and some of it seems to tie in together if you wanted to look at it from that angle too, scientifically. But I don't know if
I don't know that perspective, but that would be called naturalizing it, right? That would be called like trying to, and I have no problem with this either. I mean, trying to make it relevant to today, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I'm just talking about like myth, like, like for example, maybe Jesus rising from the dead 2,000 years ago. Like, we know that shit doesn't happen. Like there's no reason for us to believe that actually happened. And because we know that shit doesn't happen. Like we've never had anything like that. We never had people walk on water, pour, make water into wine or anything. Like we just have no reason to believe that. Like if I told you that I was flapping my arms right now, flying on the way to your house, like you wouldn't believe me because you'd have no good reason to believe me, right? You'd think I was either joking or crazy, right? And with good reason, because shit like that just doesn't fucking happen, right? And that's what I'm talking about. Like you don't have to buy into that bullshit in order to have some sort of glue, right? To have a community or connect with a tribe or whatever it is you're trying to do, right?
People taking stuff in a literal sense, it sounds really cheesy. I've looked into esoteric Christianity before, though. One thing I've noticed Jesus in the Bible is just let the dead bury the dead. Like that means he's saying if the resurrection takes place now, as in people are dead at this moment, they got to come to a real state of being consciousness because they're not really conscious beings. And if you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, they called him the sprouter of lies, the one follower of Jesus that said that he had been resurrected. So that kind of confirms, why it is about how the resurrection means something that takes place now. But, I get what you're saying with the whole literal thing and the dogmatism and all that. It just sounds like a child's bedtime story or something.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. If you have some sort of like way of interpreting it that kind of fits into what we know about the world today, I think that's great. And if that works for you, I think that's awesome. I don't have any problem with that. Like I said, I'm very sympathetic to paganism, like Nordic paganism, right? It's like in my blood, right? I'm like I had that DNA test and found that I have Nordic DNA and stuff. So like I'm like I like the Vikings. I used to like get into, like, I like the reenactments and stuff. My brother actually does LARPing, like real LARPing. You know, you go out and you dress up and you're like in this medieval kingdom, right? And he lives in New Jersey. He's my older brother. And they dress up and they, you know, in medieval attire, and they have medieval weapons, and they all, you know, act out, you know, like they're in medieval times, like a Renaissance fair kind of thing, right? And like I think that's great, and I like that. Like I almost sometimes feel like I was born in the wrong century. Like I almost would have been happier in that time in a lot of ways. You know, of course I would miss my iPad and, you know, stuff, but I mean, like, it just seemed like life had so much more meaning back then. So much more, your life counted, because like you could go off in the woods and build yourself a village, right? You could go off in the woods and build yourself a house. Now you got to worry about the cops coming to track you down, or, you know, like there was so much more freedom in a lot of ways back then, right? And
like Alexander the Great, for example, let's say he died when he was 33, but he probably lived a fuller life than, you know, most of us would in like 2 lifetimes in the modern world. You know, so yeah, that's where it comes from, man.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's hard to be a man nowadays. It really is, because back then there was things left to conquer. You know, the Vikings traveled around the world in ships, and they conquered lands, and they had stuff left to do. And it seems like the modern world has less and less ways for us to matter, and so we try to, like, you know, hide behind avatars and plastic, you know, identities and shit. Like I can kind of get down with some of that shit. Like I understand that, but so I do a lot of like bushcrafting and shit like that. You know, I go off and I camp by myself, or I learn, like, you know, how to make fires, and you know, how to use an axe right, and how to build a shelter, all that stuff. Like that stuff's fascinating. I love that stuff. You know, but that's about as good as that's about as much as you can get nowadays, right? You can't. There's no country left to conquer. There's no land not yet discovered. There's no, you know, civilization, no empire to build. You know, so I don't know. I'm rambling. But
you guys seen online, they're talking about bringing back medieval fighting, but they were saying that it's the most brutal form of fighting that you can do without actually killing another person with armor. I don't know if it's going to be like brought into Olympics or MMA or anything, but I've seen some videos on it recently. I don't know if you guys have noticed that or not. But,
no, I never heard that.
Yeah, it looked pretty interesting. Like, they come back with the full armor and the weapons, you know, can hit people with swords and axes without killing them.
Are you still with us, Dion?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. I guess I'll stop the recording. I'll stop, but you guys just stick around for a second, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I got to take a quick break. I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right.
That'll give me a second to talk to you, Brendan.
All right.
All right, guys. I don't know when the next episode's going to be. I'm still kind of working this thing out, so I'm not really sure how frequently I'm going to be doing this. I want to try to figure out how to live stream on YouTube. I got to work out some things with encoder software and stuff. But if you guys have any ideas, go ahead, leave it in the comments section. And any ideas for a future show. Maybe you would like to come on a future show and you have some topic I may be interested in. You can shoot me an email at powernihilism@gmail.com. Also, I'd like to remind my listeners and people who will be watching this on YouTube later, be sure to go over and subscribe to my website. Go and follow my website via Gmail and, you know, through your email address, and also through Google+. So you can keep abreast of when the next shows are going to be, or, you know, whatever I'm writing on my blog. If I'm posting an article or something concerning philosophy, you can find all that there. And also there are other videos to watch for those of you, some of my YouTube videos. So be sure to follow me on my website. And that is www.power- the minus symbol, nihilism.education. I also wanted to remind you guys that on my website you can find links to Facebook group. You can find, episode 1 and soon episode 2 of this program of the Philosophy of Power podcast. And you'll be able to find episodes posted on there on the website. So it's kind of like a hub of information, and I try to have at least links to all the different content that I'm putting out, whether it be on Facebook or here on YouTube or whatever. So make sure that you follow my site. Again, that's it. See you next time.